Well, I think I got all the right buttons pushed. How are you today, man?
Good, good. Just hanging in there. Got calves dropping on the ground and baling hay and just busy, busy.
Well, thanks for being here. I don't know how much of an intro I'm going to edit in front of this later. So why don't you tell us who you are and where you're at real quick?
Yeah. So I'm Kevin Deleu. I live on my family's operation in Collinsville, Texas, where my parents are reining horse trainers, and I just do registered Angus. And it's just me and my mom and dad
Okay.
just doing our thing.
How long have you guys been there?
So we've been in Collinsville since 1996. We're originally from Brazil. My mom's American, my dad's Brazilian, and I was born there in Sao Paulo. And we had a ranch in the state of Sao Paulo. And we moved here in 1996. My parents lived there together probably 8 or 9 years before that. And
so was your mom in Brazil and that's where she met your dad?
No. So my grandfather, my dad's dad, had a fabric factory in the city of Sao Paulo, and he wanted all his kids to work there. My dad didn't want to. He wanted to work with horses. So he saved up whatever money he could, sold his car, and he moved to the United States. And he was working at a ranch in Illinois, and he was just picking stalls, just doing dirty work. And at one point, he was just sick of the cold, and he was like, I'm out of here. This isn't going to work. I came to learn to ride. And the guy was like, well, just wait. I got a girl coming to help train and stuff. She's won the Appaloosa World and whatnot. He was like, fine. Well, it turned out to be my mom. And so pretty much ever since then, that was back in the 80s, I think early 80s. And ever since then, just took off.
Okay.
And then, and so then my mom and my dad had to go back to Brazil because of visa. Then my mom ended up moving to Brazil with him, and they built a ranch there and did their thing.
Okay. So if they had a ranch in Brazil, why'd they come back to the States?
Well, for me, so that way because where we lived, I mean, it was the road now for us to drive from Sao Paulo to there, it's about 2 hours. But, back in the day, it was a lot longer, and there's, not a good hospital, no good school. And because where we lived was pretty much a village and next to a small city, but
like
not
running
good
water,
education.
electricity.
Yeah, I mean, there's electricity, running water and stuff, but Brazil, the infrastructure in Brazil is a lot different, especially the education. They wanted me to have a good education and stuff, and there was a couple times when I was a baby that I got sick, and I think that kind of scared them. If I got sick and where they were, if something bad happened, they couldn't.
Yeah, if it's 2 hours to any kind of pediatric care on the best of days.
Yeah, exactly.
What it's like in a rainy season.
Oh, well, because one time we had a window propped up with a book, and I had all my fingers, and I mean, I was 2 years old at this point, had all my fingers there, and the window dropped on my fingers and broke all four of my fingers. And you can imagine my parents living 2 hours away from the nearest hospital, kind of deal.
Yeah, that's less than ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, you can imagine.
So they came back to the States in 96. Did you guys, you came back to, did you? Okay. My brain's getting in front of me again.
You're good.
Did your parents come back to Collinsville? Is that where they landed, where you've been ever since? Or was there some other intermediate stops?
No, we've lived here on the ranch since 96. When they bought the property, it was just a house, a shed behind it, and a small pond. And we just expanded, and we're at 130 acres now. And most of it's all in the same area. We have 45 acres of hay pasture just half a mile down the road.
Okay.
And that's actually where my house is. We have a mobile home here that used to be for our workers, and I live in here now. So
it's nice living close to the farm or close to the ranch. I have like an 8-mile commute, which is it's nice because I can leave work at work, but I leave work at work, and it's not like, it's kind of hard for me to get motivated to go back out in the cool of the evening, go work in the shop or go do something. Because it's 8 miles, takes 12 minutes, half-hour round trip.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, ideally
get all done in one trip, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Because what we're hoping, because right now there's so many people moving in around here, the price of land is going up. We're hoping to sell some of like our hay land at some point and be able to sell that and get some more property. You know, if it's got to be a little bit of a commute, that's not a problem, but try and get some more land at least to be able to have some more cows out on.
So without looking at a map, Collinsville is where from DFW Metro?
It pretty much straight north.
Okay.
If you take I-35, go up north, we're in between Sherman and Gainesville practically. And if you look on the map,
you'll see side of the highway.
East side of I-35.
Okay.
Yeah. And then west of I-75 that goes through Sherman.
Well, just because we're probably going to give him a shout out anyway, that's not too far away from our friend Richard at Hat Creek Farms over in Decatur.
Yeah, so he's west of me, probably about 40 minutes west of me.
Okay, so, very cool. So now let's see, where do we go? You said you're into registered Angus now, but doing a little bit of Facebook stalking about, I don't know, an hour ago, just after you approved my friend request, and then looking at your Instagram, you haven't always been into Angus, have you?
No. So, like I said, my parents are horse trainers, and I wasn't able to get in the horses quite as well as them.
Why not?
And there's so much work and they're so expensive, and horses are.
I'm totally not judging you. I'm not a horse guy either.
Well, they get, and they can get hurt so easily and stuff. And just watching my parents go through that growing up, and I don't know, because once I started 9th grade in high school, I joined FFA, and we decided to get me a heifer to show. And we were looking around, and I started with Brahmas. I bought a heifer, bought another heifer, and then we started buying some cows, and that's where I got
Why did you start with Brahmas?
Well, so in Brazil, we have friends that are Brahma breeders, and just knowing them, and also growing up, I always liked Zebu cattle. Every time we'd go to Brazil to visit, sometimes we go to a cattle show there, because in Brazil and South America, it's primarily going to be Nelore cattle, just all Zebu. Pretty much.
Okay, so let's spend a minute and kind of unpack that a little bit. A Zebu, is that an African breed?
So when I say Zebu, it's kind of like all the breeds that encompass Bos Indicus cattle. So it'll be Nelore, Guzerá, which would be, they look like Brahmas, but they have the big horns that go straight up, not like Watusi, but
right.
So there's
nothing has.
Yeah, no.
Except
so there's Nelore, Guzerá, there's a Gir, or in those pronounce it Gear sometimes. There's Tabapuan, there's Sinji, and Indo Brazil. There's a bunch of different ones, and they're all considered Zebu breeds. So like in Brazil, the association there is the Zebu Association of Brazil is what they call it.
It's kind of like an amalgamation of Indicus bloodlines.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And then like when you see mini Zebu cattle, I think that is what they're called. I don't know if there's a specific breed to them or anything, but they call them mini Zebu, but it's just because they're miniature Bos Indicus cattle.
So back to the question, why did you start with Brahma?
So we had Lehman Charlet is down the road. So we were thinking about maybe Charlet, and we were in Whitesboro, and there was a trailer full of Brahmas, and they were going to a Brahma show in a town called Greenville, like an hour and a half from here. We're like, let's go check it out there, go see it. One of my dad's best friends in Brazil, he was a Brahma breeder, and just kind of talked with him and stuff. And we went and visited a ranch there. And one thing I didn't really want to deal with was all the blow drying, the hair. I can deal with brushing them, but not, a beauty pageant kind of deal with it.
I can get that.
Yeah. And so I just got a Brahma heifer as a first show heifer. And that was an experience all in its own. But yeah, and then from there, just kind of took off. We loved doing it. And my dad was really into it also, right there with me. And yeah, it's kind of sticking to our Brazilian kind of roots with it as well, trying to as much as we could.
I kind of wondered if it had something to do with that.
Yeah. I think that had a big part to do with that also. But
so since we're talking about breeds, why'd you transition to Angus?
Oh man, I could go on a long time about that. The biggest thing for me is that the Brahma breed is really focused on the show ring. And another thing is that you can't really better your genetics as well as you can other breeds. Semen sales, for instance, in the Brahma breed are really hindered. A lot of times the semen sales are foreign only, or it's a way they control, some ranches really control the market. So
okay,
so they'll do it foreign only because the majority of the Brahma market is going to be south of the border. It's going to be in the tropical climates, Mexico, all the way south to Brazil. And because of that, some ranches have majority of the control over the genetics here. And so like in the show ring, you can go show against a bunch of bulls, but chances are you don't have access to those genetics. You can maybe go buy a bull from those ranches, but sometimes they're not going to sell you the best bull, or they may sell you a bull and you're not allowed to sell semen domestically. And if you want to sell to a foreign country, they have to approve of what country that you sell to. And it's really,
they're trying to take care of their sandwich.
What was that? I'm sorry.
They're trying to take care of their sandwich and not let it take a bite.
And so because of that, once I learned how to AI, it just became so difficult because, I could buy semen on some bulls. It may be $250 a straw, and I can only buy 10 straws at a time, at 10 straws minimum. Well, if I only have, maybe 10 cows to breed, and I have to buy so many straws of semen, because Brahmas also aren't as fertile as like Angus.
I've never heard that.
Well, at least the show cattle, it can get that way. And so a problem that I saw with the Brahmas, because genetics are not allowed to be used openly like it is in Angus, because in Angus, you can buy semen on whatever bull for practically $30-$40 a straw. And so because of that, now they're doing a little bit better where they'll sell semen on a bull, but it'll be like $1,000 a unit, $5,000 a unit, some $25,000 a unit. So what happens is that unit of semen you can only flush to, right? And because the majority of the market's going to be centered around the show ring, there's not a whole lot of emphasis on maternal value as much anymore. There's not as much emphasis on carcass quality and just what's going to win in the show ring. And because of that, I wanted to be able to raise my own seed stock cattle. I wanted to be able to raise cattle that when I go out in the pasture, I'm proud of my production. Other people are proud of my production. And I could do that with the Brahmas, but the cost for me to do it was going to be, I wasn't really going to see an actual return on investment in the long run.
Sounds like that would be, getting your own established Brahma genetics that are in demand would be a long-term project, and you'd have to fight against some other giants in the industry. One name comes to mind when I think of Brahmas, and I'm not going to say it, and I think we've talked about it before.
I know.
I'd like to think that they're not doing that, but if they are, I guess it's just business, right?
Because what's tough is what a lot of American breeders started doing is going to Mexico and buying the American genetics already born there and importing them here, right? So there's a ton of bulls that are American genetics that I can buy that were imported from Mexico. And a problem I see with that is all the money that's being spent in the Brahma industry here is going overseas. All that money should be going to American ranchers here. There shouldn't be $100,000 going to Mexico to bring a bull back. It should be going to an American rancher here that was able to raise their own cattle, be able to do that and support American ranchers, at least in the seed stock sector. And I feel like if they were able to bring the price down on Brahma semen and actually have more of a market for commercial operations to AI to Brahmas, we'd be able to see more consistency in the production of bulls instead of just seeing like, well, this bull, he sells semen for $10,000 a straw. So every single calf that he produces is going to be out of a good cow because it's only going to be from a flush. Right. You're not going to flush a bad cow. So for me, I would rather see a bull, take two bulls, for example. Each bull has 100 progeny. One bull has 100 progeny out of 10 cows, and the other bull has 100 progeny out of 100 different commercial cows. And the bull that has 100 progeny out of 100 different cows, I feel like you'd be able to get more of an idea of what his progeny are actually like if he's able to correct calves on certain, phenotypic traits. And
I mean, I think with any bull and cow, I mean, even if you took your best cow and put her on a copier and hit 100, made 100 identical copies of that cow and AI'd everything with the same semen, you're still going to have a wide range in your calf crop.
Yeah, exactly. Because I still have one Brahma cow. It was the first cow I ever raised. She was number 2. Number 1 was a bull calf. And she's produced a calf every year. I was able to get her AI pregnant at 14 months of age and got her bred back, and she drops a calf every year. And now she's going to be 15 next year. She's about to calf again right now. And she took the AI, and she's kept herself up perfect, has ideal feet, ideal teats, pretty much an ideal cow. She's not a perfect cow, but that's the kind of quality.
And hasn't missed. I'd say she's pretty freaking good.
Yeah, exactly. And I've actually AI'd her twice to $700 unit semen, and she took both times. So
have you stayed with Brahma on her? Have you tried crossbreeding out of her?
I've put my Angus bulls on her for the past several years, and just F1 calves, and then I ended up just taking the cell barn after.
Okay.
But actually, I think she took now to Brahma semen. I did AI her once and put her with a bull, but it looks like I think she took to the Brahma semen.
Okay.
So we'll see. We'll see what comes out, if it's black or if it's a Brahma.
I know I've talked to some other folks like Brahma breeders, and some Burke Tykert actually a couple years ago said that there could be a lot of value in a quarter Indicus, a quarter Corriente, and then half Continental / English.
A quarter Corriente?
Yeah.
On them, really?
For the natural selection and adaptation that they had around, mostly in Copper Canyon and in the desert Southwest for 400 years.
Yeah.
I don't think there's another breed that's as adapted or that has a genetic reservoir of adaptation as the Corriente does in North America.
I think you're right on that. Because the Brahma is actually the first registered American breed. They're the first breed developed, specifically for the United States, which would have been, back in the day, it was J.D. Hudgens helped out a lot on that with their Manzo bloodline, and I think definitely with Brahma influence in the mix, at least.
We can't talk about J.D. Hudgens without saying hi to my friend John Coleman Locke. Hi, John.
No, of course. Of course.
You know John, don't you?
Yeah. Done business with John, and yeah, really good guy.
Small Great world family. Sometimes, isn't it strange? Like every once in a while you just get one of those weird off connections. It's like, oh, know so and so. You've known that guy for how long?
Yeah, there was a Brazilian that went and did a halter breaking class, and I stayed with John. I think it was in his guest house, and he let me borrow his truck and stuff to drive around. And it was really nice family. It was really good people.
Was that fairly recently, like within the last years?
No, that was, gosh, I think I was still in high school at that point. That probably been 2010.
Oh yeah, so you have a lot longer. I was just wondering if when you were there, if they were doing any of the high density, multiple daily moves.
I don't believe so. I listened to the podcast. I don't remember. I don't think they were at that point. And they have some beautiful land out there. Yeah, that's prime cattle country out there too.
They've got some really good looking cows too.
The best. They really do. I mean, they're the best Brahma breeders there are. Their cattle are incomparable.
So let's pivot to Angus. Obviously, much more of a market, improved genetic selection. Why else did you get into Angus and out of Brahma?
For one, well, in the Brahmas, there was it was difficult for me to sell bulls. Whenever I had a bull calf, we pretty much just try to sell them at 6 months old if they weren't going to look that good as a show bull. But with the Angus, I mean, I can start semen testing them at 14 months of age, and I can already sell them at that age. I try not to, just closer to maybe 18 months and older, so that way they're a little bit more, I'm not going to go out to the pasture, breed cows, and just lose everything and then completely stunt their growth or anything like that.
Right.
Just from my experience, at least. Their pregnancy rates are a lot better. They're a lot easier for me to put in protocol and be able to do a fixed time AI. And they prolific breeders also compared to the Brahmas. I had a lot of times with my Angus, at least I can drop a calf out of a cow every single year. But with the Brahmas, sometimes I'd have to AI, put them with the bull, wait for that bull to get them bred and stuck. And with the Angus, I mean, I was able to just multiply my cows almost too much at one point.
I mean, and the difference between an 80% conception rate and a 95, it doesn't sound like that much. It doesn't sound like it'd be that bad to a layperson or somebody that's not in our industry, but that 15% is often make or break.
Yeah.
Or even between 80 and 90%. I mean, that 10% of your calf crop could be your make or break.
Yeah. Especially if you have a small herd like I do. And, you need every cow bred, because just one cow is eating so much, taking so much more resources away from the other cows that are producing and are doing well.
And you just about opened the door back up for the great hay war of TikTok.
Oh yeah. Man, that was fun. That's fun to watch.
Maybe we'll get back into that later. I have that written down,
actually. Okay, no problem with that.
Oh, okay. So where do we go from here? Let's talk about your trip.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the trip. So we've been talking for a little over a month, and I wanted to talk to you and do a podcast, and we started talking, and you're like, hey, I've got this, what was it, a 2-week trip back to Brazil?
Yeah, like 10 days. Yeah.
Yeah, you told me you had that trip coming up. I'm like, oh, wait, let's do that after you get back. You can talk about weird shit that you saw down there. So I don't even know where to start.
So let's see. Well, it's been 8 years since I went back to Brazil. Last time I went was in 2014, and we used to visit every single year. And I told my dad, because he's been wanting me to go back and visit, and I told him, I was like, the Expo Genetica, which is a real big show, I was like, it's going on next week. He was like, oh, you think next week? You think you can go? I was like, no, that's too quick. I got too much stuff to do. And then my dad went and just started doing his thing and started calling people and pretty much set up the dates for me to go. I was like, all right, calving's going to start right when I get back, and might as well just go ahead and get it over with. And so we set up with our friend Claudinho Carvalho, and he runs Naviraí, which is like a seed stock Nelore producer in Brazil. We consider him the best Nelore breeder in Brazil, at least when it comes to seed stock genetics.
And just because I'm dumb, that's one of the zebu breeds.
Correct. Yeah, that's the Nelore is to Brazil what Angus is to the U.S. in terms of popularity.
So if you were in Brazil and you said cow, somebody would think of a Nelore.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They wouldn't think of Angus or anything. They would think of a Nelore.
Well, a lot of times when you say cow here in this country, people think of something black and white with horns, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so we set it up with him we have, my dad has so many friends in Brazil. So went there so that way I could also visit my grandma. And we also have another friend, Paulo Marques of Casabranca Ranch, which is probably 2 hours away from Sao Paulo. And he's a real big Nelore, Brahma, and Angus breeder. And he's one of the bigger Angus seed stock breeders in Brazil. So on the first day, we went and visited him. Because I went by myself, and my dad's best friend there, he drove me over there. And so we went and visited them the first day, and then came back. And then from there, I took another flight to Campo Grande, which is a city out in the Pantanal area of Brazil, which is kind of like it's south of the Amazon.
Yeah, man, I don't know any Portuguese.
I'm saying,
if it was Spanish, like maybe I could kind of catch some of the words, but like Portuguese is.
So like you have the Amazon, and the area of the Amazon is called Mato Grosso down below it, and then below that is called the Pantanal. The Pantanal it's like the Everglades, right? Swamp. But it's real swampy, but it's a lot of cattle country. And also down there's a lot of it would be like Illinois also when it comes to cropland. Illinois, that whole area, all it is cropland and cattle land out there. That's where most of the agriculture is. And so I was going to fly out there and stay with our friend Claudinho for I think 3 or 4 days when I stayed there. And it wasn't a part of the trip, but we ended up being able to visit our other friend, which he lived about an hour and a half away, which was that really big ranch I went to. It was over it was about 100,000 acres at that ranch of theirs. And they ran 20 to 25,000 head of steers out there.
What's really big ranch for 20 to 25,000 head of steers?
I mean, because that guy has about 500,000 acres total. They're in Brazil, Paraguay, and Bolivia, and they run a total about 100,000 head. Is because they're at that particular ranch, it's just steers. They don't have any mama cows out there.
Wow.
And they're really trying to implement more regenerative practices, and because out there they can have a crop of corn, sorghum, and have the cattle grazing it.
Same year.
Mm-hmm. In the same year.
That's wild. Let's put a pin in that, regenerative pasture cropping grazing and come back to that. Let's hear more about your trip.
Yeah. So Claudinho at Naviraí, he has 2 ranches. The ranch I went to was the main one, and they have another one where closer to Sao Paulo. But at that place, they run, I think he said 1,000 cows there. And that's where he does most of his seed stock, and he has his own feedlot there. And they do a lot of pasture rotations where they have the pastures pretty much already set up with electric fence, right? And they can rotate them all. And in the at the 4 corners where the pastures will meet, they have a corral where they'll have the water tank there. And right now it's been really dry, so they'll put hay in there. And what they'll do is let the cows graze for like half the day, and then bring them in, because they have calves on the side as well. So they'll bring them in, let them eat whatever hay they have there right now, and then turn them back out for the next day, and just keep rotating. Excuse me. And Yeah, and out there, I mean, it's pretty much seed stock, but they also run a lot of Angus crosses on their Nelore cows, where they AI'd Angus to their Nelore cows, retain those females, and he's trying to make his own Brangus.
Would those be for export back to the US?
You mean like beef products at least?
Yeah, the beef from the Nelore Angus crosses.
Yeah. So I mean, Angus is really starting to take off there, at least for the crossbreeding, because one, they're black and they're got a lot of hair. So out there in Brazil, they're going to be a lot more susceptible to ticks. Ticks are really bad in Brazil, and they'll tear a cow up real bad. And so just running straight Angus out there is not going to be ideal. So the cross, at least to have a better carcass quality, is pretty much what their goal is right now.
That's kind of why I'm trying to put in some Angus and Continental bloodline, is just to make the carcasses that I have.
Mm-hmm.
They're good. They're small. They're efficient. They just need to be a little bit bigger. And if I have to sacrifice a little bit of efficiency, I think I can do that, as long as I can go all the way to the wrong end of the efficiency scale, which is where I think a lot of the industry is.
Are you talking about like grain efficiency, or are you talking about like kind of grass efficiency?
For me, grain efficiency matters exactly zero, because I don't have access to any of it. I don't grow any of it. Any of it has to be imported at great cost or stored in infrastructure that I don't own.
Yeah.
The resource I get is grass.
Yep.
So that's what matters to me. And we're looking at winter coming up, and I'm a couple 100 miles north of you up into Kansas. So my winter situation looks completely different. I have stockpiled grass to get through all winter, but what I don't have is protein in the forage. So I still have to import that.
What do you supplement for protein, at least?
2 years ago, tubs and stockpiled grass. And then when we had the snow, I hauled some feed hay out and some alfalfa. We had like 10 days of cold in, what was that, 21? 10, almost 14 days.
Yeah.
Didn't get above freezing. My creek even froze up, and it never freezes.
Okay, gotcha.
Like halfway into that deal, I was where I'd put my cows. They were the only ones on the ranch at the time. I had a 16-foot stock tank, okay, and a half a mile of creek. Me, sometimes I get focused on doing dumb things. Like, okay, every day I got to go out. I got to chop ice in the tank.
Yeah.
We made it through the first week, and then when it started getting down like 10 below at night, I would go out just before dark, and I'd open the hole back up, come out the next morning, and have to break 6 or 8 inches of ice back out of the tank. It got to the point where I was trying to break 9 inches of ice out of that tank, and I said, this is bullshit. I'm gonna go look, see if the creeks froze over.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, you said that was last year?
That was 21, yeah. February.
Was that during that vortex, that winter vortex we got? Because we've never experienced -4 at our place. And when I woke up to that, I mean, we didn't lose any animals, thankfully, but I mean, we had to work hard for the next like 4 or 5 days, breaking ice in all the tanks. I mean, what I do is I have a big pitchfork, and I'll just throw all the ice out. And then, because normally, you just break it, then it seems like it gets a lot harder if you just leave the ice in. Well, I take the ice out. Well, it was so cold, it just iced right back up so quickly.
I think there was one day the wind was blowing like 25 miles an hour, and I was out there. I'm really strange. I take a big sledgehammer and a shovel to go clear ice. I don't take a pitchfork, because I get frustrated when it like doesn't sit on the tines right and it just slips through.
Yeah.
I feel like I can get a lot more out in a hurry with a shovel than I can with a pitchfork.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can get a lot more done with a 12 or 16 pound sledgehammer than I can with a little axe.
Oh, I mean, we definitely had the sledgehammer though with us. It was sledgehammer, break it up as much as we could, then just get that pitchfork, because the pitchfork that I have, I mean, it was one of the real wide ones with the thin tines. So at least that helped a lot. But then it started getting to a point where the cows, they needed to drink out of the pond too. Well, the pond is it started getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And there was one point, my 1,200-pound bulls were walking on top of the ice. And I was like, no. We can't, that's my income. I gotta bring them back in the small pen and just and we ended up getting
I can imagine the panic setting in. You going out and your really expensive seed stock bulls.
Yeah.
Out there trying to ice skate, having fun. Yeah.
And I was surprised to see him walking on the pond. And so because I was going back to my house so that way I could warm up my feet because I was not prepared for that. And so I went back to the house, got my parents. We went up there, brought them all in. We ended up just getting a water tank and using the hot water out of the barn and just backing up there with our RTV and filling up the tanks like that at that point. But we got really lucky because Texas was doing really bad with our electrical grid.
Yeah,
I think you probably heard about that. And we're lucky because we're on a co-op, so we only lost power for 1 hour throughout the whole thing. So we were really lucky on that. And man, but a lot of people around here were not lucky when it came to that.
Yeah, if the grid goes down, I lose 2 water systems, which is going to be 4 tanks.
Mm-hmm. Is that pumped out of the ground?
Yeah, I pump almost everything out of wells in the ground with solar pumps.
Gotcha.
Just because when Dad was developing all the water systems out here and putting them in, there's a little bit of cost share money available. Well, a solar pump was, even when they were like $20,000 for a solar well and just enough panels to run it, when they were $20,000, that was still a lot cheaper than trying to run even like 2 power poles to get anywhere.
Gotcha.
And there was a couple systems that Dad set up that the power company was like, yeah, sure, we'll take the power over there. Here's your estimate, sir. It was like $150,000 to run a mile of power lines across pasture to get down to the well that he wanted. It's like, maybe we could pump that with solar. So I have 2 big solar pumped storage water systems. One on my pump out of a creek, the other one I pump out of a little pit pond that's basically a spring head. We pump like 10 to 12 gallons a minute out of it, and it still flows 10 to 20 out the overflow.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's a pretty impressive spring. Then the other one we have down on the creek, it's down in the water table. It's on a creek.
Mm-hmm.
One of them pumps uphill like 120 feet. The other one pumps uphill about 180 feet. Got 18,000 gallons of storage on what I call Bob. And that's the one that only comes up about 125 feet. And then on the other one, we've got, it's probably about 18 to 19,000 gallons of storage up there too, as well.
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because like
that's not even a third of the ranch.
Really?
Yeah.
And how big is y'all's ranch?
About 7,000 acres.
Oh man.
I own some of that, and I lease some of that from a family land partnership.
Gotcha.
Have another really interesting water system down south that I don't have storage on. So when it was put in on a grid tied water pump, and it's a super good well. Like, I mean, they couldn't bail it at 25 gallons a minute, but we just put a 10 gallon a minute pump on it with a choke, just so if we do have a leak, we don't have any extra ponds in the pasture, which happens every once in a while. When you put a water line in the ground over 30 years ago, there's going to be glue joints that are going to start leaking every once in a while. So we had to dig one up back in the spring and re-glue 2 joints. Anyway, so that water system, it's about 2.5 miles of pipe, and it started with that grid tied pump. Well, and there was another windmill down on the south end of the place. And sometime probably in early 2000s, Dad found one of those 10,000 gallon tanks that I've since moved, and he put it down there by that windmill. So for a while, the procedure was go down there 4 or 5 days before the cows are going to be down there, make sure the windmill's turned on, fill up the storage tank. If the storage tank isn't filled up, later we installed a cross connect where we could cross connect it into our main water system and fill that tank from that main water system.
Okay.
So that worked pretty well. Then we had an 85 mile an hour straight line wind for about 4 hours, and that windmill did not survive.
Yeah.
I went back out in the morning and the head and the wheel were all laying on the ground. Just kind of lucky they didn't end up in the tank.
Yeah.
Because all my tanks are fiberglass. I use 16-foot fiberglass tanks.
Gotcha.
So I just said, okay, this is no big deal. We replumbed the storage tank, replumbed the float valve to where it would work on the, to where I could fill that storage tank up, keep it full, and it'd run on the float valve. And that worked pretty well for a couple of years. And then I got the bright idea, like, hey, why don't I just go recase that old windmill and throw a solar panel on it and another pump? So we did that. And now I've got that water system. So it's got the solar pump on a pressure switch, and the grid tied pump is on a pressure switch. We reset that grid tied pressure switch really high so it doesn't kick on. It, like, if that solar pump can meet all the demand, that grid tied pump will kick on.
Gotcha. That's cool.
Yeah, that works pretty smooth. And the grid tied pump is the backup for when my solar goes down, or if it's a couple of cloudy days. Kind of likewise, 18,000 gallons of water. It's a lot of water, but for 250 cows, that's like 4 days maybe.
Yeah.
So I like to keep my storage tanks full in case I have a problem somewhere. I know I've got water to keep my stock tanks full. And that gives me a few days to fix a problem or to figure out how I'm going to get my cows to water. Because hauling water to 200 or 250 cows out here, that's a
feat.
It's a good way to waste a lot of time and energy to accomplish much.
I can imagine. It's like an art. Go ahead. Sorry.
I get that hauling water, is a thing. If you've got 10 cows, fine, whatever. I don't care. But if you're trying to haul water to 200 or 500 cows, maybe we need to ask a few questions.
Yeah. Because we're a small operation, so most of our pens have a pond, but we also have the city water. We've always had it. And right now, because we have so many people moving in, it's starting to worry me about, I don't know how water rights and stuff would work, because I know there's a town near us that they started having water issues, and they were telling the town, like, don't water your lawn and this and that. Well, when you have so many suburban development in the area, we have 3 lakes over here where we get pretty much all the water comes from. Well, if we have cities over here that are normally, 5,000 population, and in the next 15 years, they're saying we're going to have 30 to 50,000 populations in these cities, water's it's going to be pretty important. And to be able to water all my cows and our horses all the time. And we have a way to be able to collect water. We have a huge indoor arena, and we have the space that I'd like to try and find a way to be able to make all the culverts or make all the water go into storage tanks, at least, so we could collect off of these to be able to save water like that, and just do something different up until we can at least sell the property, and move somewhere bigger, somewhere else where there's less people. But
so you're talking about selling and moving, and so here's a couple of things on my mind. Our mutual friend Hobbs, Fire and Salt.
Yeah.
When he was planning his move out of Sisters down to Lufkin, like, he made a series of videos about the area that he was going to look in and why. And so for those kind of unfamiliar what I'm talking about, there's kind of like, there's an area where Hobbs said, and I agree with him almost 100%, that it doesn't snow too much in the winter, that you should be able to graze year round. It gets enough rain consistently, not affected by, not horribly affected by seasonal droughts like I'm dealing with right now, and I've been dealing with for a couple of years. And there's also population density. And the land is still semi-affordable to be able to at least pay for it with cows, or at least, pay the interest on the note with cows. I don't think there's anywhere you can go and buy dirt in this country and pay for it with cows anymore. And that also kind of leads into another point. So we talked about Interstate 35 earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And Interstate 35 kind of more or less parallels the 100th meridian.
Okay.
And it kind of goes back to something John Wesley Powell said probably back in the 20s or 30s, that 100th meridian is pretty much the dividing line of civilization. And it's really weird because if you look at a map of where the people live in this country, 80% of them either live on the Pacific coast or east of the 100th meridian.
Down here, once you go past Gainesville, that's it for population. And then, it's
going west.
Yes, going west.
Let's say north from Gainesville.
Oh, no.
Down all the way.
Then you're fine. But yeah, going west, it's like your background. That's what it starts to look like at past that point. And then once you start going east, it's a lot more water. It's a lot more trees. And it's definitely different. We were kind of had a plan if we could find a place in Oklahoma where land is cheaper and do like that, but not at least too far. We were kind of thinking of have a place where we could keep the cows and still keep our house, our ranch there to be able to develop anything or keep certain animals there, the bulls there that we're going to end up selling, just keep the cows out at the other place and try like that. But we're still waiting, for that. Because when we sell, we have to sell a lot of it all at once.
Right.
We can't and have to have something as a backup to go ahead and take the cows out there kind of deal. And
I think like eastern Oklahoma, southeastern Oklahoma, especially, I think would be a pretty good spot.
It's pretty out there too.
Or the western half of Arkansas, I think might be all right too.
Yeah, that area, there's always property available out there, and it's good land, and it's not too many people, but it's enough out there that there's also enough rainfall typically you can manage well.
If I moved 150 miles east, I could do everything I'm doing on less than half the land.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Would that be in Missouri still, or is still in Kansas? Or?
That'd be in southeast Kansas, kind of over by like Coffeyville area.
Okay.
Coffeyville, Pittsburgh, that kind of southeast Kansas where it's a little bit of wooded, maybe kind of on the east edge of the Flint Hills before it gets taken over by trees.
Okay. Gotcha.
We're actually heading over there tomorrow. And by the time this comes out, it'll be a couple weeks in the past. So I'm headed to Gail Fuller's field school. Going to go camp in my friend Gail Fuller's yard and
cool.
hang out with some like-minded human and soil health nuts that are trying to rebuild local food systems. So I'm looking forward to that.
Cool. That would be fun.
And if you're wondering where you can find some of these events at, there's Kansas Soil Health Alliance has an events calendar. That's at kssoilhealth.org/events. And I'll try to make sure I have a link for that in the show notes. And that should have a lot of, soil health and regenerative events coming up.
Cool. If you could send that to me, I guess later in the WhatsApp.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
That was kind of an unplanned little ad read promo thing.
No, that's fine. At least for the listeners.
Yeah. And, for the listeners that are interested, I've just committed to being part of the team at Soil Health U. I probably should have the dates in front of me. It should be like third week of January. Tony's Event Center, Salina, Kansas. I'll be getting some details about that and hopefully a discount code for all of y'all to be able to use to get discounted admission to Soil Health U. So I get this; it's probably a little far out of your travel zone, but
I like to travel. I've traveled a lot by myself to ranches up in Illinois, North Dakota, Montana. I love to travel, love to see cattle, I think
it's really important to get off the ranch and go get exposed to new ideas and gosh, just go get training. It's a conversation that's been started on a social media platform. How do you feel about that?
from that video the other day of like all the training, the CEs, stuff like that. I think it's important. I think everybody needs to do it, because then if you just get stuck in your old ways all the time, you can't better yourself. You can't grow. As like my dad always taught me, whenever if you have a question about something, ask that question to every producer. When you go to all the ranches, doesn't matter where they are in the country, if they're in Brazil, if they're here, ask the same questions of the way they do it. And gradually, you'll be able to at least learn what's going to work best for you. And you'll also come up with your own way, what works best for you. And also just what's the correct way? What's the average way somebody does some. So like if I ask this producer, what mineral program is yours? What vaccination program do you have? Mineral program for you? How do you feed hay? How do you raise a bull like this? So any way to learn something. And I think at least on TikTok, it helps a lot on there, because you can learn from a lot of different producers also whenever they're get on their soapboxes about stuff.
Oh yeah. There's some people that have some pretty wild soapboxes they want to get on a rant about, don't they?
Yeah, we all do on there. It gets to the best of us sometimes, but I think it's a really important platform. At least it's bringing a lot of good conversations.
Yeah. Hey, we've got a break here, so I'm going to do an ad read and punch a button. So we'll be right back. Introducing C90 Ocean Minerals. C90 offers complete nutrient support for today's farm and ranch. With over 90 minerals and trace elements in nature's perfect balance, C90 remineralizes soil, increases pasture quality, and elevates the wellness of your herd. Enjoy improved drought resistance, increased pasture protein and RFV values, and the elimination of pink eye and foot and hoof rot. Originally discovered by Dr. Maynard Murray, C90 is the only product that meets his standards for sea energy agriculture, including a living ocean source and elevated amounts of macro and trace elements. Freshly created in the Sea of Cortez and OMRI certified, C90 is free from pollutants and contaminants, including microplastics. Visit C90.com to learn more today. That's SEA-90.com. C90 is available through distributors across the U.S., including over 200 Tractor Supply locations. Click the link in the show notes to find the dealer nearest you. We are always looking to grow our network. Give us a call or email today, and be sure to mention that Ranching Reboot sent you. Please check the show notes for all the contact information. Now back to this week's episode. And we're back. So back to your trip to Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned regenerative grazing. So that can be kind of a conscientious term sometimes. So how do you define regenerative ag or regenerative grazing?
So that's when we're talking in Portuguese and English, that's just kind of the way that they try to describe it. How do you describe it, at least? Because I don't think I have a good definition or understanding completely.
So I guess we can kind of talk about it in broad strokes. There's, the traditional, or there's the production / commodity type system, which my friend Michael Thompson would say is like farming in a flower pot. You're treating your soil like it's basically just aggregate to grow plants in. And then as you transition to the sustainable side, people are more thinking about, okay, is this really going to be here for my kids if I keep doing this? And if people start down that path, they realize that almost 99% of things they're doing are destructive to or not 99%. A lot of the things they're doing is destructive to some part of the ecosystem, and they get a little bit farther down that path and they get into regenerative. And the production commodity guys, they get up in the morning and they'll load up a sprayer and they're going to go kill something, or they're going to go hook onto the disc or the plow and they're going to go out and plow it up and kill something. Okay. The regenerative guys, we like to wake up in the morning and go out and find new life, find some new weed we haven't seen before, find a grass we haven't seen before, see a plant we haven't seen before, get those bonus baby calves that we weren't expecting out of our big giant horned calves or big giant horned cows that won't fit down the chute to get pregnant.
Yeah, gotcha.
I get that's the biggest difference and it's a mindset too, I think. If a producer is going to be regenerative, I find that almost all of them are asking questions about their operations, other folks' operations, what they can do better. And not just that, they understand that they don't know everything, that this business is always evolving, that the land is always evolving. We're learning new things. And we have to spread those ideas, and those ideas get spread at a lot of conferences, seminars, webinars. Probably on some podcasts. I don't know what we're doing here, but there's probably some other podcasts out there that have useful information.
Yeah. So the way it sounds to me is working with nature and not against it.
Nature plus one.
Nature plus
nature
one.
With gentle guiding nudges.
Yeah.
Let the cows express themselves. Make sure they, when I'm rotating my cows, I got to move them into a pasture where they know they've got forage. And Kevin, it's really weird that, I'll move out of a pasture with waist deep grass. And people are like, you got plenty of grass here. Why are you moving out of this? Because I've been in here 11 days. And yeah, there's waist deep grass, but a lot of it was over my head when I moved in here.
Yeah, gotcha.
They might have already taken half out of it, and I still have 1,150 pounds per acre of forage in a pasture.
Mm-hmm.
I can't take that. I mean, if we keep taking that over after we've already taken the first half of forage, or we stay in there, we're likely to overgraze our pastures.
Yeah.
And it's funny. Our friends at Noble, they're starting to make some great content, to talk about what overstocking and overgrazing really means. It's possible to be understocked on a ranch that's overgrazed.
Gotcha. Yeah. So like with my operation right now, we've always kind of had the mindset of, with as small of an operation as we have, we need to have the maximum output that we can with the cows. So we need to be able to have as many cows as we can on there, and that means feeding hay, that means feeding grain. Well, then look what happens whenever all the inputs are super expensive. Well, that's taking away from the profit that I need to make in the long run that I normally make. So, right. And right now, because we also still have the mindset of maybe transitioning to another operation at some point. So I don't want to get rid of, because I also do seed stock, the purebred register. So I don't want to get rid of bad genetics or certain cows that I can still try and retain some daughters out of. And so
that might perform better on another ranch. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that I need to cut down on cows. Let's say like I'm a little overstocked right now for my operation, but right now there's some cows that I'm not ready to get rid of, because I know I really want a daughter out of her. She can still produce a good bull for me. So right now I have maybe
I feel that. That's why I have this year.
I completely called my open cows, my badfoot cows, because even my badfoot cows, they could raise a good calf. So I put embryos in them. Well, I got them bred to a bull and took them to the sale barn, got rid of them. And so now I maybe have 8 cows that are going to calve now. They're good cows. I don't think they belong to go to the sale barn. I think I can sell them to somebody who's had to sell out a bunch of cows. Now that we have a lot more rain and a lot more hay and stuff, I'm hoping that there's going to be more of a market coming up soon, that maybe people will be wanting to buy some more good cows. And then once I can cut down on them, then I think I'll be at kind of a number right now that I'll be able to manage my pastures a little bit better, because I have cows in every pasture, and that's tough to rotate cows in less than 20 acre pasture, trying to rotate them and still maintain the grass and not use as much hay.
Things separate that you want to keep separate.
Yeah. Because I can't, because I'll still use a bull, and I can't use, I can't separate out certain cows from certain group because they're related to that bull. And so I'm small group of cows here, small group of cows here, small group of cows here, and just trying to work around that right now. it's a work in progress, but it's still going.
I understand, and everybody has to make you have to make sacrifices. And
yeah.
I think one thing that's important to understand about regenerative ag, it's not a destination. It's a journey, and you start where you are.
Yeah.
I haven't ever told this little anecdote on a podcast or on social media. So several years ago, I think it was 2020 when I was at Soil Health U. They had me up there to speak, and or maybe it was 21. I got to share, not the stage, but Ray Archuleta was also there speaking, and a lot of listeners know who Ray Archuleta is. Are you familiar with Ray?
It may if I saw the name.
He's a former NRCS employee that basically since he retired, I don't know, 8-10 years ago, he's basically been traveling around the country saying, hey, everything I told you to do for 30 years at NRCS was wrong. This is what you need to do now. Huge advocate for regenerative agriculture. And
Gotcha.
He loves to start off a keynote by making everybody get up and do jumping jacks or some shit. One of the things they do at Soil Health U that's really cool is they have a speaker's room. So, all the speakers and presenters, we can go hide.
Gotcha.
And not get a break from getting cornered in the hallways, which I don't mind, but there's a point where I'm just like, I'm done with people. I need a break for a minute, and I have that thing to go hide. So, over the course of 2 days of being there, I got to know Ray a little bit. And at the time we were kind of referring to soil health as a bus, like, all right, so-and-so's on the bus. This guy's on the soil health bus. And a few of us, we kind of expanded that to talking about, well, this guy just got his ticket, but he's not sure if he wants to get on. And then we started wondering, like, well, who's driving the bus? And that kind of led to an email chain with Gabe Brown and Ray Archuleta. And I said, well, Gabe's driving the bus, and Ray's reading the map, and I'm trying to make the map in crayon.
Yeah.
I'm trying to write the map in crayon as fast as I can to give it to Ray to read to Gabe to drive the boat. But maybe not everybody will get that one. So everything not in one herd. I get that. I get you have to make some sacrifices. And like I said, you start where you are. And part of it is understanding that you're not doing everything as good as you could be.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, some of the conventional guys that, went to college 20 years ago, maybe have a piece of paper on their wall that says ag management, and they've never got any other education. Or, it always kind of strikes me when somebody says, I'm just here for the CE, or I have to go to this much a year.
Like, have to? No, you should want to.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't have to go, to maintain that certification, how many hours would you go to?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'd like to know. And probably never know that number. That's okay.
And hopefully this next year I'm going to be able to go to more, try to go to as much as I can, as long as my parents are around and somebody's watching, doesn't need help or something. But
there's a good one coming up in November called Regenerate in Denver. Yeah. Early bird tickets are still on sale, I think, for another few days. But by the time this comes out, you're going to have to pay full price. Yeah, Regenerate 22 in Denver. That's Quivira Coalition puts that on. I've been twice, Albuquerque both times, and it was awesome.
Really?
Oh yeah. That's if you want to go hang out with a bunch of other soil health nerds and people that are in regenerative ag.
Mm-hmm.
Regenerate would be a good one. Probably be 500 or 600 people.
Really?
Yeah.
There, that ranch that I went to in Brazil, that real big one, they're trying to, it's like you said, it's like a journey. They're not all the way there yet, but they're trying to transition their operation to a more regenerative means, instead of just depending on buying fertilizer all the time and having to use that, and then having to use pesticides and herbicides and all the time, just being able to do in a way that they can maintain it all with as minimal amount of extra input as they can. And
can you talk about that a little bit, what that kind of looked like? Or
yeah, so in Brazil, they have a grass called brachiaria grass. It's kind of like a crabgrass. And both the ranches that I went to, what they'll overseed their corn crop with the brachiaria, and then they'll get all their corn, and then the brachiaria, I mean, it'll be huge, tall. So then they'll turn out all the cattle on that and rotate them. And at that place, like I said, they have 20 to 25,000 head, and they have 15 cowboys to handle them all. And so they'll just use electric fences, rotate them around. Don't let it get, don't let them hit it too hard. Keep going and keep going.
Any idea how often they'd be moving them, like in a situation like that? Or
I'd have to go back and because I recorded pretty much all of our conversations. So as I go on and start going through those videos, I'll send them to you also, so you can. Yeah, you won't know what they say, but and
I don't speak Portuguese, but I can at least look at pretty pictures.
And and another thing that they're doing is overseeding certain. I don't remember exactly when they do it, but they overseed it with mixes. So I'll send you the pictures after. They have like big turnips. I guess they'd be like a turnip, and the root would get huge, and they'd have that. They'd have a bunch of legumes that they'd plant, and so that way they could. You might have to help me with the wording, but to nitrogen fixation, in the ground, because they were telling me the problem is that when all the nutrients that are really way down below that the grass on top isn't going to get, you need to bring them up to the soil, bring them up. And so that's what they want to do is
you need a deep-rooted plant
deep-rooted plants do that. And they'll still use glyphosate. I don't remember when it is that they do it, because I think because they can't do the brachiaria grass with their sorghum, because it can get taller than the sorghum at times. So that will affect the crop. So they'll just do it with the corn. So they mainly do corn, at least on that operation. And like they have a 10,000 head feedlot, and that feedlot has a pond in the very back where all the poop and the wastewater goes to. Well, all of the water and waste from that pond that's all the fertilizer they use for 12,000 acres of sorghum.
If they're grazing it at higher densities and moving frequently, there's also a very large value of fertility per acre that those cattle are dropping at ultra high density. And that fertilizer coming out of the back of a cow is bioavailable to all your soil life.
Yeah.
And when you have a feedlot type situation where your manure and your urine goes to a lagoon for a period of time before it's transported back out and sprayed back out in a pasture, there's different decomposition processes that start.
Yeah.
So when a cow pat just lands in a pasture, that's going to be aerobic decomposition.
Okay.
Decomposition with air. And our microbiome, the microbes and the dung beetles, they're going to get in there and they're going to make tunnels in it, let air get in there to dry it out and whatever. But when it's in a liquid form and it stays in a liquid form, it gets mixed with urine, then you're getting into some anaerobic decomposition products, which can lead to some toxic gases and some not so great decomposition byproducts.
Okay, gotcha, because of the urine in it as well.
And while I'm talking about it, and like this isn't on you or anything, but just in general. So, we talk about feedlots and feedlot waste management, and how, with all the antibiotics that we use in this country, Like almost 80% of antibiotics by weight in this country are fed to livestock in a confined feeding operation. And it's a very similar percentage for sodium bicarbonate. Like we feed so many tons of sodium bicarbonate to cattle. Like, okay, well, why do we do that? Well, we have to feed them sodium bicarbonate to prevent acid forming in the rumen. Well, why do they have so much acid in the rumen? Because they eat a lot of grain.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, yeah. Anyway,
it's there's a better, it's like we're pushing the cattle too much to do something that they're not made to do. It seems like sometimes we've been able to make the cow more efficient. You know, we talk about the size of the cow to produce more beef with less head of cattle and stuff. But to me, it's like, well, at what cost?
More pounds per animal, is that good for the producer or is that good for the packer?
Well, exactly. So in Brazil, the price of cattle in Brazil is the same here. JBS controls the entire market there in Brazil also.
They control the entire market here too.
Yeah. And so a lot of times I'll see people, they get all huffy and puffy about Brazil. It's like, well, the Brazilian cattle is probably just Amazon rainforest cattle. And it's really not, because JBS also wants to have, they don't want a crap product at the end of the day. That's why they're also,
they don't want negative image either.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to try and do what they can to save themselves, over everyone else. And at the same time, I saw a USDA report that, Mexico and Canada, if I remember right, Mexico, Canada, and Australia, we import more beef from them than we do Brazil. Not like as a whole, but Canada, I'll send you the link after. But Canada and Australia, I believe, we import more beef from them than we do from Brazil. And I see a lot, at least on social media, it's probably just a few loud mouths about it.
I'm kind of a loudmouth against Brazilian imports.
Yeah, exactly.
I love to say that the American beef consumer wouldn't have to get upset about the rainforest being destroyed for animal agriculture if we'd quit importing beef from Brazil.
Yeah. And one thing that I noticed about like the American beef industry is they try to have the best absolute product that we can produce. It has to have a lot of marbling. It has to taste good. It has to, they try to make it too perfect of a product. And to me, in the long run, I feel like we're making a commodity that is, how do I put it? Only for those at some point who can afford it, because beef is so expensive, at least if you catch my, I don't know if you're.
Yeah. I mean, it's expensive, but at the same time, I still think it's too cheap. A lot of it's too cheap.
Too cheap.
Yeah. Well.
Oh, I think
talk about like, if we're going to talk about commodity beef, and feedlots and the environmental cost of feedlots and the monocrop agriculture to support that, we also have to talk about exploited labor in packing plants.
Yeah.
Like we could talk about, what kind of people work in the packing plants, what the working conditions are like, what they get paid, what the living conditions are like in Southwest Kansas and Texas and Oklahoma panhandles, where a lot of packing and feeding is concentrated.
Because they have like one person for every single, step along the way, practically.
Yeah. And, Mike Callicradle makes some really great arguments about the perception of efficiency at scale in those big plants. And, he's got some good solid numbers to back up what he says. But, I like to pick on JBS. So don't take it personally that you're
no, it's fine. I mean, it's I don't care. It's two billionaire brothers or whatever it is.
They hire migrants, low skills, immigrant workers to come in these horrible working conditions because these immigrants want the opportunities afforded in America. And they've gotten away with it for a long time by being able to use exploited labor that's basically underpaid. And the horrible, horrible thing about that is, and I'm gonna pick on JBS again, and we can pick on Marfrig, we can pick on Smithfield, because those are three of the biggest protein companies in the entire world, and they're taking advantage of exploited labor to sell us overpriced meat.
Yeah.
And then turn around and say grass-fed beef is too expensive. Like, I think that a lot of these big companies hide their environmental and social costs with so-called efficiencies of scale.
Yeah. And they, you get told a lot, well, it's the best protein, and we, it's because of protein. We need the protein and stuff. Well, at what cost? I see a lot. I'd like to dwell more in, or, dive more into the numbers on it, but I always see a backup. Well, most of the feed that we feed cattle is, byproducts of what we make for corn and stuff. Well, I see a lot of cattle that, operations are making their own corn silage that's there on the property, or other places that, do the same. So how much is it actually that it's just byproducts? And
it's real easy to grow cows when you have a feedlot next door to an ethanol plant.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real, because that ethanol plant is going to have tons of grain to deal with every day. And if you just say, hey, I'll take that off your hands for $20 a ton.
Yeah.
You can feed that to cows and make a shitload of money. But somebody's getting exploited along the way, and it's the American taxpayer.
Yep.
Because they're buying your feed stuff to feed to your cows. So your cost of production is super low. You capture all the premiums you want at the sale barn, think you're getting a good deal while you're cutting every other honest cattleman's throat.
Mm-hmm.
But JBS or Tyson or Cargill get the ultra premium on your carcass, get the meat, the gravy, and the cherry, and give you back 10 cents and make you think you did them a favor.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's just the way that the market's been built around. So anybody who's been in it, they don't think that there's better ways to be able to make your money back, or at least not, giving it to these corporations and these people who control it all. And
I've always thought, and this is some of the libertarian in me, if I can't run my business and be profitable without government subsidies, I shouldn't be in business.
Yeah. And that's what our friend in Brazil was telling me, that he thinks in the US, we have just as much capability to be able to do like what they do down there. I mean, even though their growing season is a little bit different and stuff, but he thinks that they're able to do it here. It just, the subsidies are what's preventing it, pretty much. And I'm not very knowledgeable on all that. I'm trying to learn right now as much as I can on that. But it's
the broad strokes of it is, when you go to, say, Farm Credit or the bank to get a loan, they're not going to tell you what you can and can't grow. They're not going to tell you how to grow it. They're not going to tell you what kind of cows to have. They're just going to make sure that all your numbers line up. And if you're planting a crop, they need to have security on that crop. What's the security on that crop? Insurance. So if you go borrow $100,000 because you want to grow a crop of something, because you need that money to pay your tractor, your fuel, your inputs, your implement, and your land rent, the bank's going to want to say, okay, we need to make sure we get our money back. So go put insurance on that crop. So then you take your paperwork and you go over to the go to the Farm Service Agency. And what crops can I plant that I can get insurance for here? And it's usually a very, very narrow range of commodity crops that you can plant. And even if they do insure crops that you would like to grow, there may not be a co-op market for them. So there's a lot of farmers that, look, let's face it, I don't want to deal with customers anymore than I have to. I don't want to deal with the public anymore than I have to. Ideal world, I could just sit out on my ranch and grow cows and people would come, they would come out, hand me money, and I would give them beef, and no words would have to be exchanged, and they would leave. Okay. Like that would be a perfect world for me. We don't live there. We have to, we can't, as producers, as livestock producers or crop producers, we can't be content to just sell in bulk to the easiest middleman.
Yeah.
Like here, there's basically 4 crops that are grown in this area. And I think there's 6 or 7 that crop insurance would cover. But for those 3 or 4 that crop insurance will cover, if you wanted to grow it, you got to have somewhere to sell it.
Gotcha. You already got to have the guy that's going to buy it lined up. And
if your local co-op won't buy it, you need on-farm storage to store it until you can find a buyer, until the buyer that you have arranged can come pick it up. So it starts to become a problem. And one of the solutions is, and I'll just throw this out there because I'm thinking about it. Like, so say you're a big corn or soybean farmer listening to this and saying, hey, dude, you're full of shit. There's no way I can sell anything else. My friend Russell Hidrick, who I did a previous episode with, he put a grain mill in a 20-foot cargo trailer with a bagging unit.
Really?
So somebody that's growing a whole bunch of corn, you know what? Take 5 acres and grow a different variety, or grow, some barley or some heritage wheat or something different that might have 100x profit margin, but you wouldn't be able to get rid of a whole circle of it. But if you grow a couple acres and have it milled into flour and put your farm label on it, how many of your neighbors would love to bake bread with wheat flour from down the road? I would.
Yeah.
I sure would.
And so, like right now, like I said before, we have so many people moving in around here. I feel like there is a market, at least for me, that I can tap into when it comes to like producing beef. So I'm wanting to, from this crop I have right now, I'm wanting to see if I can raise some steers that I can, sell my own beef. And I think that, that's just something a lot of us, if we're going to want to really stay in this and still have our farms and ranches, especially on a small scale like I do, I think that's just something we're going to have to start looking into to just start being more for a local production.
You don't have to sell very much meat direct to consumer. You don't have to sell very many halves or wholes before that starts to make a big difference on your bottom line versus just the commodity market.
Yeah. And, that's something I'm trying to dabble with now, and I'm trying to move the operation in a different approach. Instead of just, I raise seed stock bulls, I sell the bulls to people who need them, and that's it. If I got females to sell, that's it. And just trying to make more out of the land that we have, at least while we still have it, and I'm trying to implement as much regenerative means as I can. Like you said, it's a journey. It's not like it's I still have my market with what I do, but in the meantime, I want to try and, steer it in a different direction also.
What do you think the first step on that regenerative journey is going to be? Or what do you think your next step would be?
One, cut down on a few more cows. So that way I think I can just handle what I have better. I think if I was able to cut down a few more cows, I could keep more together in a pasture. I can leave other fields to grow back a lot more easily, instead of having 2-3 pins of electric fence in between them and stuff in 20-acre paddocks. And something that I learned, I'm dabbling with this, so I haven't even started, but we'll see how it goes. So with our horses, we have a lot of shavings, right? And we have a big old shavings pile where we've been.
What kind of shavings?
Pine shavings.
Okay.
For the horses and their bedding. Yes, gotcha. Yes. And so we have a big pile that's just turned into compost pretty much at this point. It's real old. So in Brazil at our friend's operation, they're doing a microbial fermentation process where they have a huge water tank and they'll have a barrel in the middle. And what they do is they go out in the woods and they collect all the dead leaves, all the organic matter on the bottom, the topsoil they'll take, and they'll go and they'll put it in this barrel and they'll fill it with water and molasses as I forget what the term is.
Probably some kind of like accelerant.
Yeah, for the bacteria. And then they'll put water aerators in there for 24 hours. And then they'll take all that and put it in there and they'll spray it on their compost.
Right.
And then I'm still getting all the details.
That on the compost?
Yes.
Okay.
On their compost. And then the compost, they go and spread out on the pasture as fertilizer.
Okay.
And so
I thought you were going to tell me that they were making compost tea and liquid extract.
I mean, I guess it's kind of like that, but yeah, they have their compost areas, and they have this big it goes on their 3-point, and it's just a big churner, and it churns it all up, pretty much the compost, and then they put it on their spreader, put it out on the pasture. So I'm going to start trying to implement that. I've got my pile going right now, and I'm going to be going in the woods all around and just collecting as much as I can. And got a lot of limbs I need to use a wood chipper to, throw in on there too, and all kinds of stuff. Even there, all the cattle that die, they have a compost area where they put all the bodies of the dead cattle in there, and they use that after a while.
It's biomass.
Yeah, it's biomass. So
do you already have a wood chipper?
No.
Okay.
There's a lot of places that rent them out around here, but
I was just wondering, like, if you had one, because when the revolution comes, that'd be a great place to stick a bunch of pedophiles.
Yeah, exactly. We got enough place to hide it around here.
Oh man, I haven't hardly asked you anything on this stupid list yet.
Oh geez.
Yeah, I know, right? We might have to come back and do this again.
That's fine with me. I enjoy this. This is
so while we're here, we're talking about the farm and possibly doing some more regenerative practices. You mentioned that you have, quote, dirty soil. And
yeah, I did mention
explain what that means.
So I call it dirty soil. I don't know if that's the best term to say. This area has been cattle ranch for well over 100 years now. And
fine.
I mean, but see, like, I don't know what it's been here, because I looked at a picture from the 50s, and I mean, it was just pasture land. Well, now it's a lake that got they made a reservoir right next to me, and I have no idea what kind of cattle have been here. And when I raised Brahmas, my Brahmas never got sick, but as soon as I started raising the Angus, those calves would get sick really bad. They would get scours, a fever, and I would just have to start treating them all the time with Zactrin, Primor, and just have to treat them all the time. And to me, I think it just has something to do with the soil. It's something in the ground that I guess the Angus are just more susceptible to than what the Brahmas were. And now we give vaccination, and we hardly have an issue with it. But that's when I say dirty soil, that's what I kind of, because I have no idea what it all was around here back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wanted to get an idea what you're meaning, because that could mean a lot of different stuff. I mean, it could mean everything from heavy metal or saltwater contamination to residual herbicide or insecticide load.
So I mean, we have a lot of oil tanks out here also, and just behind me, just south of me right here, we have a hay field that we bought half of the hay field, and our friend bought the other half. Well, the other half, we didn't want that half really, because the soil was completely saturated with oil because of that tank. And I mean, it's still saturated, and it's bad. There's that. And also all the old farmers around here, who knows how many pesticides and herbicides they were using all the time. all the time in the soil. Because if you go out in the woods here, there's old sheds everywhere out in the woods around here. There's an old shed here on our property. Right here next to my house, there is a really old dump pile that there's still just pieces of tin you can find all over, of oil cans even. So I have no idea what exactly everything is. It's all new growth pretty much. All the trees here, they're not old. They're not.
Well, yeah, if there were trees here in the 1850s, our ancestors wouldn't have had to burn buffalo chips for cooking fuel.
Exactly. And I mean, it's because we've also had a lot of cattle trails that pass in this general area also. So, it's always been a real hustle bustle kind of area for the last couple hundred years.
So I got to ask, have you done any soil testing to see if there is a lot of residual herbicide, pesticide load in the soil?
So not soil tests like that. I mean, I'll do a yearly soil analysis, at least, just to get an idea of what we need for fertilizer, for lime, like that. And not that I've seen anything on residual effects. Like, is there a test that you can do like that?
Well, I'm not sure what test you're using, but I'm familiar with basically two soil tests. Okay. One of them is the Haney test. And the reason I think Haney test is good, and not that I'm a testing expert, but the way I understand it, almost every other soil test uses like some kind of acid to titrate the material, so then they can break it down and see what's in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't rain hydrochloric acid on my ranch. I've never seen it rain hydrochloric acid on my ranch. It rains water.
Yeah.
So the Haney test uses water, and it'll tell you, and Haney can tell you what's in your. I don't want to say something wrong. The Haney test is what I would recommend. That should give you an idea of what your nutrient load is. And then the PLFA, phosphoric. Yeah, I'm not going to get that one right. PLFA. And Ward Laboratories can do those. Regen Ag Lab can do those.
We've always used Noble, actually, because Noble's 45 minutes away from me.
Oh, yeah. And call them and ask them where to go get your stuff tested.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I used to send it to them. I sent it to A&M, I think, last time is where we sent it. But yeah, we always use Noble for a lot of stuff.
I sent a lot of manure samples to A&M.
Oh, you have?
Yeah. Yep. They have I haven't seen it in a few years. I'm pretty sure they're still doing it. They have a program called GAN Lab, Grazing Animal Nutrition Lab. You send them a fecal sample and you tell them what kind of critter it came from, and they'll tell you what she needs to perform better.
Oh, no kidding.
Fecal analysis. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Whether she needs energy or protein or this mineral or this nutrient or whatever.
Really? Oh, I'm going to look into that, because I bet that would have helped me last year, because I switched mineral programs last year. My cow weren't doing very well. And, but this year they're doing a lot better, at least, I feel like. I guess we'll see once calves they're all on the ground and go back to rebreeding. But
we'll have to talk about mineral water some other time. Mineral supplements. And I get that, everybody's ranch is going to be different, need a different supplement program. Oh, what did you see different in working facilities down in Brazil that stuck out? Anything?
They're all made out of wood.
Okay.
For one. I mean, that's just because all the wood that they use for their corrals and stuff, it came straight off the land, And so, I mean, there's that. The chutes are really nice. They have, I forget what the name is, but they're made out of wood, and they're really quiet, or a lot more quiet than the, metal.
Yeah.
They're not clanky, and they'll have 3 sections, where in the middle section, they'll have like gate, kind of like a door that shuts them on their side also. Okay. you know how on a regular shoot, the entire side will
the squeeze.
Close the squeeze. Well, they'll have one in the middle just to do that.
Okay.
Sometimes. But and the corrals, not a whole lot different sometimes. Just work the cattle the way they'll go in pretty much.
I kind of feel like I want to make a comment right now that when you're working in a set of wooden corrals, you've got to use a lot less pressure than you do if you're working in a set of pipe corrals or steel corrals. And I think that since we have a lot of, really strong, super strong working facilities in this country, it's let us get complacent with our stockmanship and push too hard, too fast and get away with it because we've got really strong pens.
You're like, oh, well, if they run in, they're not going to break anything. And no, I understand what you mean. I mean, in Brazil too, because they have Nelore, and Nelore they can be pretty crazy, but if
they're Bos Indicus,
yeah, if you work them fine, if you work them low stress, there's no issue. They go in. I was helping them out at that first ranch, just work some calves, some bulls. And there was one bull that didn't want to go in, just would not go in. Well, we worked 60, and he always stayed in the back in the small holding pen before the alleyway, and he would not go in the alleyway. He just wouldn't go in. We'd let another group come in, and he'd be with them. The entire group would go in, no problem. He just kept back. So 2 of the cowboys just went in there afterwards and just grabbed him and just pushed him in the alleyway. And then, he went on. But I asked them, I was like, do y'all even have a hot shot here? They go, no, we don't need a hot shot. They don't need a hot shot. They're not yelling. They're not screaming at them. They're not whipping them. It's just, you have a stick, just tap them on the butt.
They understand stockmanship.
Yeah. And, here I see it way too often. There was one place I went to I was just to help out on my palpation skills. And it was a family's operation. Well, they had the kids with hot shots. All the cows would be in the alleyway, and I was working the cows up to the chute, and they were going just fine the way I was doing it. Well, then, their little girl gets the hot shot. The cows can't go anywhere. And she's just sitting there hot shotting them on their side. And the parents didn't care. Well, the parents also had a border collie right at the chute. Every time the cow would go into the chute, bite the side of the cow. And when the cow would leave the chute, bite the cow whenever they leave the chute. And the entire time it was just so stressful on the animals that you look at the cows, they're going crazy. There's slobber coming off of them.
They remember everything that's been done to them. They remember every time they get gathered up, stuffed in a set of pens, and thrown down a chute. They remember it every time. I'm not sure they remember individual people, but I can damn sure tell you they remember every trip through that corral, every trip through the chute, or every trip on that truck. And one thing I understand is that every time I'm around my animals, I'm training them.
Yeah.
They're learning from me.
From when they're little.
Yep. Every day. I mean, I can't even drive into the pasture on the other side from where they're at without changing grazing behavior.
Really?
Probably changed a little bit, but every time you go out and you mess with those animals, it changes. So what I'm getting at is every time they go through the chute, they're going to get grumpy. I mean, I put together my herd out of 2 different sale barns and one of my good buddies' culls. That's what I put together my cows from. And with Corrientes and crosses, you're going to get some retired ropers. You're going to get some cows that are retired ropers. And 363 days out of the year, they're calm, they're gentle, they don't run from me. We get in that corral, and there's about half of them that remember their rodeo days, and they don't want to be in those corrals. There's some of them, there's a couple of them that would fit down the alley and through the chute. We just don't send them because they're a little bit wild. And I'm not afraid to admit that. They're making really nice calves. All my calves, all my yearlings, all my 2-year-olds, they've all gone down. And something I really would like to try is to have a day, to have a bluff day, like bring them all into the pens, sort your groups out, run them down the chute. And instead of doing anything, let them stand in the chute for, 30 seconds and eat cake out of a bucket.
Just make it calm.
Juice. Make it calm and give them a really nice reward when they're standing in that chute.
Yep.
I think that would really help, especially if a guy did it, on your calves the first time your calves ran through.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of running them through that first time and jabbing needles in them and, branding them and doing whatever you're going to do, run them in, let them eat a half a pound of cake out of a bucket that you're holding.
Yeah.
And then turn it out. And that way, the next time, I bet you at least half of them will be like, oh, shit, that wasn't bad last time. I got a treat.
Yeah, exactly.
I ran down there and got squeezed. Maybe that's okay. We'll go do that again.
It's like some of my Angus cows, that the ones that we bought, they'd run into the chute and have to catch them and stuff. It was super fast. Well, now some of them get to where, like, here's the head catch, and they're like, just, are you going to do it? Are you going to catch one? They let me catch their neck. I've just gone super calm with them. So now they're like, okay, it's not that bad. He's just going to do what he's got to do. And then I'm out.
I have one of my Corrientes that she'll walk into the chute, look at me and do that. Like, she'll just walk up there and get her and just work through and let me gently close the head gate on. And there's some of them that are so fast going through there. Like, I got a new hydraulic chute last year.
Oh, yeah.
I make sure I'm running WFO, so those things are fast. But I've got relief valves on them, so if I do get a miscatch, it's not going to crush anything.
Mm-hmm.
Man, there's some of them that come down through there and know how to work their horns through that alley and shoot fast. I think I had like three or four belly catches on the head gate last time.
I used to work at a vet clinic around here, and it was funny watching the longhorns. They make their head go like this and they go down the alley because they know the drill, but the alley there was a little bit shorter, so they put their head pretty much like this, just going down the chute and everything. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, and
in their heads.
They know exactly where the tips of those horns are at every second of their life, and a fly doesn't land on one of those things and they don't know it. It's not like it's, an inanimate weapon that they can't feel. I mean, they've got feeling in that thing all the way to the tip.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was one thing that I didn't like about the Brahmas was dehorning, because that was so stressful when it came time to do it. If you did it, the younger they were, the better. But if you missed that point where they're not just little buttons anymore, it causes a lot of stress on them. And,
yeah.
And that was one thing I really wish that the Brahmas, because now they're doing a lot more pulled, but I wish that was something they had really focused on 20 years ago and started really implement it then to try and, get away from that. Because even when they throw it in on their F1 crosses, sometimes those can be even worse than the Brahmas, like the F1 Tiger Stripes.
Yeah.
And we had guys that go in there at that vet clinic to dehorn, and man, it was, the amount of blood and stress that would come out of it sometimes, because they don't do it on time. They don't do it when need to do it when they're calves and stuff. And it's just super stressful process on that.
And I agree with that. I've had people ask me over the last couple of years if I was going to dehorn. And for a while, I kind of went back and forth. Thought, maybe I should dehorn my calves. Maybe I should dehorn all my calves when they're born, so I won't have to worry about it. And the more I thought about it, whether you believe in God or not, whether God gave them the horns or whether they evolved with them, they got them for a reason.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I better have a good reason to take them away. And I really don't. I'm just going to try to naturally breed them out. And based on this year's calf crop, which is out of straight up Angus last year, and my falls, which are out of Fleck V influence Simmental.
Mm-hmm.
They're all smooth headed.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't even seen nothing even really has buds right
do
now.
Y'all have, do y'all have cougars out there?
Yes.
In
There's
Brazil?
actually one that lives here on the river behind my house.
Really?
Well, I say that, and I haven't heard her for 2 years, but there
Gotcha.
has been one living on the river near my house, which is like 6 miles from the ranch.
Yeah. In Brazil, jaguars are a problem on a lot of operations. One of our friends, they would have, which actually it was, excuse me, the gentleman I went to, his ranch in Bolivia, they run about 30,000 head over there of mama cows. And the jaguars at times would take 5 to 10% of the calf crop is how bad they would get. And, at that point, down there, they just have to hunt them at that point. And they're, hunting's still illegal in Brazil. And in Brazil, at least, I don't know about, the other countries like Bolivia, Paraguay and stuff. But.
Well, I imagine you can't just go to the gun store and buy a firearm in Brazil either.
So now it's different. Now you can own guns there and stuff. They've really relaxed it a lot. I don't know the specifics on it, but hunting is still legal except for hogs in certain states. Because before there wasn't regulations or anything on it. So, the wildlife population started really getting cut out. And then they just, made it illegal to hunt. But now, hogs took off so bad out there that they have to hunt them now.
Is that do you know if that's a recent thing, or have they been there for a while and then their population is just getting around to exploding?
It's really exploded. They've kind of been around for a while, but it not like it is now. At least they just exploded way too much. And it's gotten really bad there, if not worse than like here in Texas, it seems like.
That was my follow-up is, are you in hog country? Because I don't think you are you?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah, we're definitely hog. There was a hog I chased on my four-wheeler. He was in one of my pastures the other day, but because I used to raise hog dogs. I used to raise blackmouth curs for hog hunting. And
that wrote down on my list of questions, by the way.
Yeah. And that's what that back is over there. That's a boar spear. I've never put to good use. I actually have a few more spears right there that I've been meaning to go after. But yeah, the hogs they're bad around here. Really bad.
We got fortunate. The state never allowed people to hunt them here.
Mm-hmm.
And our animal health veterinary agency, Kansas KDHE, I don't know if that's right, but whoever is responsible for animal health in Kansas, that agency, they got with U.S. Fish and Wildlife or Fish and Game Wildlife Services Division, which the Wildlife Services Division of Fish and Game, if I had to work for the government, that's probably where I'd want to work, because those guys do the cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They spent a significant amount of taxpayers' money flying around in a jet ranger, hanging out the left side with a shotgun, and they'd shotgun these things like just mass wholesale slaughter these hogs from the air. And they managed to basically hunt them out of my area.
No kidding.
4 years, they basically hunted them out. They did another 4 or 5 years of trapping and got the last few out. And it's been probably 3 or 4 years since anybody's seen hog sign up here.
No kidding. Because around, like, right where my property backs up to the government land that surrounds Lake Ray Roberts.
Okay.
So, they made it a reservoir and they sectioned off. So it's all hunting land. It's public hunting land. Grayson County is the only county in Texas where you can't use a rifle. It's bow only. But the hogs have so much place to live around here. So there's really not a whole lot of hunters And,
there could be 10 of you in the area that are all trying to get rid of them and all trying to hunt the shit out of them. And that one guy from Dallas that just comes out on the weekends doesn't give a crap. And that's the hog sanctuary.
Yeah. There's a farmer around here. We actually rented his hog trap, a huge round pen, and it would sit up. And he had a game camera, and it was all in his app on his phone. And so it alerted him whenever the hogs are there. And on his app, he just click a button and the whole trap would just fall right around him.
Yep.
And I think he'd send them overseas, like to Europe or something. It's something like that.
I'd go rent a wood chipper.
Yeah, exactly. Get him out of there. Man, make him into compost.
Yeah. Well, hey, I seriously, I'm not even a third of the way through this question sheet. We've been going for almost 2 hours.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, we're gonna have to come back. Yeah, if we keep going, this thing is just going to be a monster to edit. So
that's fine.
Let's come back and do a part 2 in a couple of weeks or a month or 2.
Perfect with me. That's fine with me.
All right. Before we get out of here, you got anything you want to promote? Traffic you want to anywhere you want people to go? Where can people find you? How can they get a hold of you?
You can find me on my TikTok, at least. I think it's at Deleu KC, DELEU KC.
I'll make sure we get the right one.
Okay, cool.
Just tell me where. And then I'll make sure we get the right one.
Also on my Instagram as well, and I also have my website deleuranch.com. So it's still a work in progress. I switched to Squarespace, so still working on it. But other than that,
I've been struggling with GoDaddy and I'm thinking about checking out Squarespace.
That's what I moved to. Yeah, because I was using Wix, and Squarespace, it's really easy to manage.
I've never really been that impressed with Wix, but checking out Squarespace is on my short to-do list. Maybe we'll get to that today.
Yeah, try it out. Works good.
All right. Well,
thank you so much for having me on, and look forward to next time, hopefully.
Yeah, it was awesome. Awesome getting to know you. It went fast, and we'll definitely have to do this again.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, you have a good day, and rest of y'all have a great week.
Thanks a bunch, Brian. Take it easy.